A very good afternoon to everyone, and welcome back after the tea break. I hope you all had something to have during the first session and this. I'm Dr. Shreya Mishra and will be your host for the special lectures today. Before we start the sessions, a quick reminder to put your questions in the chat box. As time permits, we will have some questions at the end of each talk. Please keep your mics in mute to ensure smooth sessions. For this early afternoon session, we are honored to have with us Dr. Janat Shah, Director IIM Udaipur, to give us insights on building a sustainable research ecosystem in an Indian B school, experiences of IIM Udaipur. Now, research in India, especially in the field of management, has been in abundance, but has hardly made an impact on global academic research. However, IIMs of the country have kept the flame burning. In the past decade, more IIMs have been established to promote significant research by the management academic fraternity in the country. Out of all the new IIMs, IIM Udaipur has been a success story of building a robust ecosystem for research. Within the first 5 to 6 years of its establishment, it has found a place among the top 10 schools under NIRF ranking. IIM Udaipur has proved that providing the right kind of motivation and career path to the faculty can create a sustainable research ecosystem. We thank Dr. Janat Shah for spending his time to share his experience and insights on the matter. Dr. Shah is a founding director and professor of operations management at IIM Udaipur. His interests are in the field of supply chain management and operations strategy. He holds a mechanical engineering degree from IIT Mumbai and doctoral from IIM Ahmedabad. He has won many teaching awards and authored textbook on supply chain management, which is used in MBA and executive MBA courses in IIM Bangalore and other reputed B schools. He has also been responsible for management education programs for executives of various companies, including Aditya Birla Group, Bharti Airtel, IBM, Infosys, and others alike. Dr. Shah has previously held the position of chairperson postgraduate program and other key positions at IIM Bangalore. He has also been a visiting scholar at the Sloan School of Management and MIT. Currently, he holds the position of special professor at Nottingham University. Thank you, sir, for sparing your time for us, and may I request you to take up the session from here up.
Thank you, Shreya, for wonderful words. And thank you, Professor Dhruva and Professor Chaturvedi and Professor Sai for this invitation. First, I want to compliment the entire group for doing this whole exercise over 3 days. Not all of us do that, okay? And I think it's not an easy exercise. A lot of us are more internal, inward looking. So I think it's a great exercise. I'm also, have a very fond memories of my physical visit, which I had made about 3 to 4 years back. And remember the wonderful hospitality, meeting with several of you, and wonderful dinner. I guess this time I'm not going to have, maybe at some other point in time we would do that. I had talked about last time what we were trying to do at IIM Udaipur. And at that point in time, I think we had put a lot of things in place. But I think today I'm able to say a little more confidently that sustainable part. And I'll come and talk about why I'm saying I like to believe that we have a sustainable research ecosystem. I'm not going to try and say what you should do, because I think you are the best position, because I'll tell you why I'm saying that. And because I think anything we do about an institution level, there are a whole lot of intricate discussions we do with large number of stakeholders, right? So I'm going to share much more about what we've done at IIM Udaipur. And I'm going to spend a little more time on terms of thinking behind, why we made certain choices. I think that's very important, because I don't think, somebody can say, can we just replicate this? I think we made choices based on circumstances at a point in time. And every institution will have to make those choices, right? I genuinely believe that, Indian management education has a huge potential. I believe that, see, we're talking about a center of gravity shifting to east. I mean, we can talk about a time frame, whether it's a 20-year or a 30-year, but it's bound to happen. And there, I feel, Indian management education system has a potential to become, hub of management education. And I think some 30 schools will have to play a role, BIMTech being one of them. So I feel I'm very passionate about this issue, that how do we collectively, so I don't think it's a question of one institution. I think collectively across both public and private institutions, can we have this 30 schools which are going to take leadership and build this whole ecosystem where we can say we will become, hub of management education in this part of the world. We have all the advantages, but anyway, that's my, dream, and I hope all of us can work towards it. I'm just going to share my slides in terms of just to put some structure, right? Feel free to stop me at any point in time, right? It's not, idea is not, I think I'm just sharing certain thoughts. We're all colleagues, right? And as I said, we've chosen some path. We've been lucky in terms of where we are today. So let me just share my, PPT with you. Are you able to see this?
Yes, you can see it.
Yeah. So I think, title has been given to me in terms of, so I'm sharing essentially our experience. And one of the key things I want to focus on the sustainability part, right? That how do you build something which is sustainable? Okay. So, as you know, I'd spent 20 years at IIM Bangalore. Okay. And I've been part of that dream, what we were doing at IIM Bangalore. So honestly, this is a slide I had taken up, which I had prepared for IIM Bangalore. Okay. I just put IIM Udaipur name. Essentially saying that, look, we need to build this, any institution we talk about. When we look at globally, the institution do only two things, research and education. And by and large, I think in education, we were fairly good, right? So I'd said, can we look at a benchmark of top 200 schools in the world? And can we aim to be there over a 20-year horizon? As I said, this is honestly a slide which I had prepared for IIM Bangalore. Okay. I've just changed the title to IIM Udaipur. Now, essentially, so we asked this question that in 2011, we were 13th IIM. There were fairly good private schools already there. So the question we asked was, how do we build this IIM Udaipur? Okay. So, we also knew that we have a lot of stakeholders, right? I mean, this is not like a saying, I have a dream and let's do this. You have to convince each of the stakeholders. For example, when you look at our students, I mean, they come and they tell you, look, I have only one single goal, placement. Get me good placement. I don't care about anything else you do, right? Faculty have their own ambition, staff have their own ambition, recruiters, corporate have their own. Society, we are located in Udaipur, Rajasthan. They have their own, expectations. Rajasthan has given us 300 acres of land. And they have expectation that we'll do something for Rajasthan, right? I mean, the Udaipur city did a run. They wanted IIT. They got a poor cousin as I am. But, they have the same. So somewhere, and we're a centrally funded institution, central government has certain expectations in terms of the way you will scale up, all that. So I think finally you got to figure it out. How are you going to manage all the stakeholders? And within that, whatever one wants to do. So I think obviously we had a huge advantage, right? That we were coming at the point in time, we had a large number of schools we had done well. I came from IIM Bangalore, I'm a student of IIM Ahmedabad. have my doctoral students who are teaching at IIM Calcutta. There's a fair amount of knowledge which is there. They've done extremely well, right? So what can we learn? Calcutta and Ahmedabad started in 1960, right? So they had celebrated 50 years. So we had those experiences. But we had also experiences of global. For example, I saw as a part of your, program, you went through what Shrikant Datar and other had talked about, right? So we had this book, their work which had come out about that celebrated 100 years, saying how do we look at management education? And I think very interesting work by, Darwin, Shrikant and others kind of thing. So that knowledge was available. There's also interesting knowledge available from a ISB, institution which somewhere started in a decade they had done something. But more importantly, we are also at a schools in neighborhood in terms of Singapore, right? You have SMU, which have done phenomenal work. You have HKUST, which has done phenomenal work. So I think essentially this is a question we said we need to ask ourselves, right? So I should tell you that we spent fair amount of thinking about a lot of these issues. And it took almost 2 years by the time we put together what we really want to do, right? And I must say we had outstanding board. For example, we had Rajiv Bajaj on our board. He kept asking one simple question. What does IIM Udaipur stand for? And he said, you have to answer that question. And I think it was one of the most profound questions I've found. That he says, management education is a crowded space, and you're entering at this point in time, tell me what does IIM Udaipur stand for? And he says, for example, the Bajaj Auto is not a two-wheeler company. Okay. He says, we have defined Bajaj Auto in some particular way. Help us understand what does IIM Udaipur stand for. So obviously we had a huge advantage of outstanding board, right? But at the same time, we realized that there was no academic in the board. So we created academic advisory board to help us understand this. So one of the first, some of the homework which I had done was just to understand higher education space. Okay. And all of us know that as a country, we have not done very well. What's something we're not very proud of that you look at any of this. So we looked at data at that point in time, but I'm giving you data of 2021, we're essentially saying, first understanding this whole higher education space. And, I'll be honest with you, it came as a huge shock to me when I looked at this data. Because the data tells us that when you look at our top 10 institutes in the world, which is the youngest institution in this? University of Chicago, which started in 1890. So first thing somebody tells you, you better be 100-year-old, okay, to be a great institution. Not a nice, thing to know when you're a young institution and you say, can we do something, right? So I think first lesson for all of us, that this is very different from rest of the world, rest of the industry. I'm using industry in a broad, loose sense. For example, if you look at same thing for a corporate sector, where all our students, our work essentially with corporate sector, that world is very different. Obviously, all these numbers have changed by now, right? In this world, number changes every, so this is June 20 data and June 21. But essentially what you see here is this is very different kind of world where, most of these companies didn't exist 20 years back, right? So this world is very different from our world. And I think since a lot of our board members, a lot of our stakeholders come from that world, I think educating, I'm using a probably wrong word, but making sure they understand that education is very, very, very different. You cannot talk about 2 years horizon. You cannot talk about 5 years. I think to me, this is one of the hardest lesson at personal level, that you got to talk about very long term. I think one of the biggest challenge we face is our board wants us to do something in 2 years, want to do it in 5 years. You cannot do that. Okay. So how do you convince the stakeholders that you cannot work with a short horizon? But but there was something interesting in this 2020 data. There were at least 4 institutions, which were in top 50, which were in less, had built this institution in less than 50 years. And I think interesting to understand that all of this in our part of the world, unlike previous list which I showed, top 10, which is all essentially Western world, primarily US and UK and other thing. But this world is essentially, you're talking about Singapore, Hong Kong, Korea. And it's interesting to see what they have done, right? And so at least I personally have spent a lot of time understanding what HKUST has done, what some others has done, similarly what SMU has done. Okay. So one of the main thing which we saw, 2 things. One is a long-term thinking, all of them. Saying I need to talk about horizons which are preferably 20-year horizon. And second, you better get your act together on research. Right? So there are 2 major lessons we took from this exercise. Okay. So what we did was, we said, look, since our board doesn't have, academics, how do we get some of this thinking? So we say, let's reach out to some of the, outstanding people and let them help us understand this phenomenon. So, most of you would know those names: Jahar Shah, ex-IMA director; M.R. Rao, ex-IMB. He was my colleague at IIM Bangalore and subsequently dean at ISB. So he brought a fair amount, and he himself has been a faculty at NYU Stern. So he brings a very unique experience. Jay Satia was somebody who was a dean at IIM Ahmedabad. Then he went to International Health Organization. He was involved with Public Health Foundation. And we thought it'd be good to get to international. So John Camillus again, was a faculty at IIM Ahmedabad, is currently at the CAT school, very senior strategy professional faculty. And Ravi Bapna is relatively young. He's at the Carlson School. Okay. He started his career after doing his PhD at ISB. So he understands somewhere this part of work. And somewhere we took their help in saying, how do we crack this? Okay. So a lot of our thinking essentially has come from a discussion in this academic advisory. Okay. And we also, ask this question that if our vision is a leadership in research and education, what are the goals and benchmark we should have? And what should be our prioritization? Okay. We can never dream that what is this we want to achieve after 20 or 30 years. But somewhere what do we do first and what do we do? And this is where I think we have taken a lot of, decisions. Now I'm saying each institution will have to figure this out. And I'll tell you why we did certain things. Okay. And it has worked for us. Okay. Essentially, we have used, C.K. Prahlad's framework, where he said in a strategic intent, and we have just strictly followed what he said in that paper. He said, if you're entering a crowded space, right, which is what we were, identify loose bricks. Okay. So you have this whole crowded space, existing players who are very strong. You're a newcomer. What do? So they said, identify loose bricks. Okay. And don't try and do everything together. Build layers of advantage. Okay. So we first looked at what do we want to do as an institution, right? What are the key stakeholders? I've not listed all the stakeholders, but to start with, talked about faculty, students, impact on society and institution. Finally, you have to have a financially sustainable, right? You can't build an institution, right? So essentially, we looked at all this. And similarly, we said, what are the expectations of each of those stakeholders kind of thing? And somewhere said, over a 20-year horizon, can we emerge as a top 5 in all of them? Okay. Whether it's a faculty saying, when faculty makes a decision, are we in the list of top 5? When student makes a decision, are we in the top 5 in the list? When a recruiter makes a decision, when society looks at saying that who's making impact, right? So what we did was, we identified the loose bricks first. We identified 2 loose bricks when we looked at management, education environment at that point in time. We said we can never do very well on establishing ourselves in terms of teaching and outcome, because that's already established players. So we identified 2 loose bricks: high quality research, because that's where we found hardly anybody was there, including IIM Ahmedabad. Okay, at that point in time, high quality research, I think only institution which talked about was ISB, and IIM Bangalore had started talking about this in 2004 somewhere. Okay, and second was the international rankings. We found apart from ABC, nobody bothered about international ranking, neither Lucknow nor Indore, Kozhikode. So we said, here is actually 2 loose bricks. If we focus our attention on high quality research and international rankings, then we can actually somewhere build our name. And then we said, we will go on building layers of advantages. So we will first focus on high quality research and international ranking. Then we will build layer on teaching and outcomes. Then we will say, on top of this, we also have to make sure faculty earns enough income, right? And then we will talk about impact on society. We just followed this, that's all. So as I said, we borrowed framework from C.K. Prahalad. And obviously, a lot of all this discussion happened in the Academic Advisory Council and a board. But essentially, we have just blindly followed this. And there's a reason why, in a management education or education general, we are able to do this, which other industry may not be able to do it. Partly because our competitive environment is stable. If you ask me who was a list of competitors in 2011 and list of competitors in 2020, it's same. Second, the technological environment changes much slowly in our industry than other industry. So somewhere you could talk about a real long term. And that's why you have, alumni plays a very important role. So somewhere I just wanted to take you through kind of thinking which happened and why we decided to focus on this. And we looked at certain benchmarks, So we are saying international ranking initially will be only in MIM. Then we'll look at global MBA, right? High quality research, we'll say we'll only look at UT, D, and FT. Okay. And a lot of issues of what do you communicate internally, what do you communicate. So based on that, with the board, we essentially came up with Vision 2020 and Vision 2030. So actually, initially we started with Vision 2030. Okay. Then board said, look, this is nothing but that diagram translated here, right? But board said, look, in 2030, not you're going to be there, none of us are there. Give us something earlier. So we came up with Vision 2020 also. Okay. But we refused to give anything before 2020. We said, we are discussing in 2013. We're saying we will not commit to anything for 2015. The earliest point in time you should measure is 2020. And these are the goals we committed for 2020, right? We're saying because we had identified UT Dallas as high quality research, we had identified there's a loose brick. We said, can we put a goal on this that will be in top 5? Okay. Second, we said financially we should be independent, and to get any international ranking, you better get ASSB. Now, there were only 2 rankings which are considered for international ranking, ASSB and AQUES. AQUES, we are not eligible because they said unless you are in existence for 10 years, you can't even look at. ASB luckily was saying you could do it, right? So initially, as I said, we said let's get ASSB accreditation and let's focus on getting this UT Dallas ranking, right? Now, once we said we're going to focus on high quality research, a lot of other things were straightforward, right? They're all outcomes of those decisions. So we said faculty should have a research as a priority 1. And it should get translated in the amount of time they spent on research. And we said faculty should not spend time on service at all. So we said entire administration should be done by professionals. So till 2 years back, we didn't even have a concept of so-called. So when I talk about IIM Bangalore, when we talk about PGP program or a 2-year MBA, we would have admission chair, we would have a program chair, we'll have a placement chair, we would have financial aid chair, we'll have a student affairs chair. I can go on. We didn't have a single one of them till last year. Only now we have one position, which is a 2-year MBA chair. That's all. So from beginning, we have said faculty will not do administration. Placement, we don't involve faculty at all. Okay. So all this was a decision because we decided we want to be school where we will stay focused on research. And we have done, see, all I'm saying is once you decide focus, rest all is very clear. Our promotion is only based on, research, right? Since our focus is on UTD and FT, we don't expect anybody to publish in quantity. We said, give us only 3 papers in first 10 years. That's all. Somebody doesn't publish in 5 years, there's no issue at all. Because that's a decision we've taken, right? So I think, so let me just talk about some outcomes and then I'll talk about why we're talking about this being sustainable, right? So today, if you look at UT Dallas looks at last 5 years, right? And we are number 4 in the country today, right? Now, the point is, our faculty size is honestly 1/3 of faculty size of Bangalore and Ahmedabad. And we are talking about 2016 to 20. We keep on adding faculty. In 16, we were only 25 faculty. But I'm saying the reason, this is there is because we just worked on a focus and we identified a loose brick. And you can see why it's a loose brick. Nobody else has papers there. That's all. So it's a loose brick. Nobody focuses on that. As I said at that point in time, as I said, ranking, FT ranking, I had some data on FT ranking in MIM. Why is it that, in last year, we had only 5 schools, apart from IIM's SP Jain and within IIM ABC and Udaipur? It's simply other had not got accreditation in time. That's all. We managed to get accreditation in 2018, right? So obviously we worked for it. But because we had identified that as a focus area, right? You look at last 2 years, we have 6 papers in FT, right? And 4 of this by faculty were joined in last 3 years. Okay. 2 UTD, 6 this thing in last 2 years. I'm coming to why we think it's sustainable. Okay. You look at faculty we have hired in last 3 years. As you will see, everybody practically starts their career here. And we invest heavily. And we say simply, you become a star in research, we will support, and you will do well, and institution will shine on its glory based on your glory, right? What has happened is, today you ask any doctoral student and say, give me top 5 schools you want to be there, IIM Udaipur would be there. Go to any campus, okay? And in some campuses, you go to ISB campus, which is a good PhD program, which is the #1 school. The way you look at it as a doctoral student, they will actually say IIM Udaipur. They rate us higher than Ahmedabad and Bangalore. If you ask, largest number of recruiters from ISB PhD program is IIM Udaipur. Now, why? Because we've created that resource ecosystem with a focus, and we say, if you're a young faculty, we are the best place to make your career, right? Okay. I mean, it's as simple as that we are interested in you building your career. Another thing we have done is, I mean, there are too many issues, so I don't want to get into it, but because we essentially hire young faculty, we have area advisors. None of them are like hot shots, but people are willing to spend time with our faculty, right? So every area we have a area advisor who's going to help people because we don't have a senior faculty. So if somebody asks me a question that why do you think this is sustainable? Because today, honestly, I don't have any role to play in this. There are 3 things which make it sustainable. One is just the presence of outstanding young faculty. I'm willing to put a bet. You go ahead and look at faculty, young faculty across campuses, we have the best cohort. So if I'm a young faculty, I would identify saying that I'm going to be among young people who are all interested in working on a research, who all want to publish in top quality journals. And the institute provides a huge support. So one is the outstanding cohort. Second is the research ecosystem, which clearly says you stay focused on your research, right? Percentage of time you spend, teaching load, support you get, right? And third, which is to me probably one of the most important. So, basically we articulate to faculty that, the way you should look at your career is first 7 to 8 years, you should just stay focused on building your research. Don't worry about application at all. Don't worry whether you can tell a corporate that how this is useful. That will happen in your second phase. So we look at faculty career, the way we talk about institution, the faculty also we talk about a very long horizon. In a first phase, you're expected to just stay focused on building your reputation in your core group. So if I'm working in a sustainable supply chain, and if there are 50 core researchers, I should be known there. That's all. Then you worry about impact, then you worry about practice and all that. Now let me come to a piece which I think is one of the most important part. So as you talked about, as you're aware, in 2019, we have an IIM Act in place. As a part of, we have a board. So what we did is board came and said, we want to go through this visioning exercise and want to understand what you guys are doing. You're doing interesting stuff. So they actually got one of the top consulting firm. I can't name them because it's a pro bono exercise by them. They said, why don't you help us? So board did this exercise. they got an external, management consultant, one of the top management consultant, and saying, help us understand what should be our vision. So we have come up with this vision 2030, which is done by a board. And finally, at the end of it, it's come up with something what was very similar to what we had talked about. It so happens. But most important is now it's a board driven. I don't have a role to play now. It's a board which is driving this vision, which talks about two pillars, which is a research and a student transformation. And essentially 3 goals by 2030, saying we want to be in FT Global MBA in top 100. We want to be in, because there's no one domestic ranking, they're saying, look at 5 domestic ranking and we should be there in top 8 in all of them. Whether it's NRIF, whether it's a Business World, Business Today, Time. So they've identified 5 things. In our research, we should be there in UT Dallas top 100. Now I'm saying it's a board driven. So it's not, doesn't depend on a director, doesn't depend on a faculty mix at that point in time. So now we are saying is essentially our whole exercises. So board is going to select a director who's going to believe in this vision, right? So the reason why this is sustainable is because of 3 things. We have a strong research ecosystem. I didn't spend too much time on describing it. Second, we have outstanding faculty, young faculty who are all, have a high stakes in this, right? I showed you the kind of faculty we have had. And third, it's a board which has a vision in place. Right? Now, all I'm saying is, I'm not saying this is the only way to do things. I'm just saying we chose certain path. It so happened that what we decided in 2013 in terms of building this, starting with this loose bricks of international ranking and high quality research, then building layer on the teaching quality and a placement, building layer of ensuring high income for a faculty, and then impact. I mean, luckily it looks like that in 2020, when the board did this exercise, they also identified similar. So we are lucky there, right? But today we feel it's sustainable because of these reasons, that we already have a research ecosystem. We already have a vision, which is a board owned, right? And realize it's a long-term 2030. It's not talking about what we need to do in 2021, right? And as I said, outstanding young faculty who actually believes in all this. So, let me stop here and, take questions and comments. And so, as I said, I think we were probably honestly quite lucky, where in 2011, right, there were circumstances which made a lot of this possible. And we have chosen one path. I'm saying each one of us will have to choose what is appropriate for oneself, right? And so let me stop here and take questions. So maybe should I start with those questions which are there in?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'll just speak out the question and then maybe you can answer. So you don't have to look at the question.
Yeah.
So first question, I think you might not be able to see because it was privately sent to me, was by Dr. Sahai. He said that IIM Udaipur obviously raised ahead in research. So what was the role of faculty selection, which you have already covered, but also the role of faculty retention?
So I think faculty selection is very important. But in 2011, who will join IIM Udaipur? Okay, so it's not as if, even when we talk about some of the dreams in 2013, nobody believed us. So already I would say we have 3 generations of faculty. What I described was the last generation. So today, what we do is so obviously faculty selection and retention is very important, correct? So today, if you look at last 3 years, our question to recruiting team is very simple. We ask only 2 questions. As I said, we start people at entry level only. Okay, we don't, right? We ask only 2 questions. Does the person have a potential to publish in a top quality journal, which is either UTD, in next 4 years? If person cannot, we will not hire. That's all. Second, the person should be able to be a reasonably good teacher will he or she be able to do a good job 3 years from now? We are not saying today. By 3rd year, will he she be a reasonably good teacher in an MBA class? Only people who qualify this will get selected. So that's on the selection front. But this is a luxury we have today. Okay. Honestly, that's why I'm saying we have a 3 generation. But what we have done is given a huge support to everybody. So even faculty who got selected in 2011 to 14, I want all of them to dream about finally publishing in UT Dallas. We'll provide support, right? That's why this academic advisor. Retention. Okay. Retention is a huge challenge, right? So the only reason, so what we are saying is faculty should be here because they want to be. Where do we lose faculty? Answer is very simple. Ahmedabad and Bangalore, right? So in last 2 years, we have lost 3 faculty at Ahmedabad and Bangalore. I mean, that's okay. As long as they're going there, we're saying that's fine. Even if people look at us as a stepping stone, saying if finally I want to be in Ahmedabad and Bangalore, the Udaipur is a great place to start your career, I'm fine, right? The whole idea is over a period of time, we're thinking people will stay here because I genuinely believe because of our vision, which is board approved, right? We are the most ambitious institution from a research perspective, even higher than Bangalore and Ahmedabad. So if you're a young faculty, if this is where you think your future is, then, right? So we're saying today, over a period of time, right? To some extent, we are spoiling faculty, right? They don't have to do administration. They do very little teaching initial years. So people are not going to go to a place which will expect them to do a lot of other things. So yes, we would lose people, but we will lose to institutions which are right now ranked higher than us. So I think, but obviously we do want to spend a lot of energy on this, building a great campus. There are disadvantages of Udaipur as a city. So we want to work on that. I mean, obviously young faculty worries about kids' education. It's a genuine issue. They'll worry about income. So one of the goals which we have talked about is in 2030 is by 2030, our faculty should have 80% of income of Ahmedabad, Bangalore faculty, right? So that's a goal. We are working on it. Right? So yes, I think now at least we have solved the problem of faculty attraction, right? We're able to attract faculty, right? The retention will remain a challenge, but we are not going to lose to anybody else, honestly. We will lose essentially to Ahmedabad and Bangalore, and which is not a bad position to be in. Yeah.
That sounds quite optimistic about not just losing the faculty, but losing to a better place. So it's
and so we don't stop anybody. We are saying we want you to focus on your CV, right?
True.
Because if you build your CV, it helps us also, helps you also.
Yes. Another question from Professor Sangra is that what was the biggest obstacle of all to overcome this entire journey, and how did you overcome it?
So I think convincing all the stakeholders, including students, right? I think this whole idea, so I didn't spend enough time on what we do in education, but a couple of calls which we have taken saying we are a long-term player. Okay. What does it mean? So for example, one of the earlier decisions we made was that we will always audit our placement reports. With a result, we are always lowest among even 6 IIMs in our cohort, right? Because we get it audited. We are the only one who declare that we are not placing 100% students. We are the only institution, right? Okay. Because we are saying, look, we are not going to be dishonest about it. Okay. It hurts in a short run. But if you are a long run player, so obviously we do a lot of conversation with students on this issue that we will work on your transformation. So we have a very strong linkage with our alumni. We do a lot of conversation. Now we are also working on a placement, which we had not worked on, right? We think we build a fairly good program and we will work on corporate relationship, but it'll take time. So I think doing this conversation so let me give example, even in research. Actually, let me show that data. It's very interesting. In NIRF data, we dropped, okay? And we dropped on research also in NIRF. And board said, how do you make sense out of this? You claim that you're spending so much investing in research, but in NIRF itself, you're dropping in research, you're dropping in NIRF ranking. How do you explain all this? So I think a lot of time takes in spending time. So, if I share that part of a presentation where I shared this whole idea of why, NRF in a short run doesn't make sense. Okay, so I'll just take 2 minutes on this. So we said, how does NIRF look at research? Okay, and we said by NIRF research, IIT Kharagpur is number 1. IIT Delhi is number 2. Sorry, IIT Roorkee is number 1. Kharagpur is number 2. But 6, since Kharagpur at 6, I focus a lot on that part. Okay. So first I said, NIRF research focuses on quantity. We focus on quality. And you cannot have both. Second, I showed, sorry. Yeah. Then I showed, this data, I talked about how does data on the research, that I talked about. Then I showed, let's look at IIM performance over last 3 years, 18, 19, 20. And as I said, it's supposed to have got score of 29 in 18, score of 35 in 19, and score of 30. And I said, I can't explain any one of them. And then I said, okay, let's look at 3 institutions and look at the ranking in NIRF. Okay, so we showed data of Udaipur, Trichy, and Raipur. I said, to me, doesn't make sense at all. So I said, don't waste your time on this. If you do right things, finally you will make it. And I'm saying it's like a cluster. Within a cluster, things will keep moving. Don't worry about it. We have to move to a higher cluster, which will happen over a period of time. And we asked a hard question that, do you want us to go, IIT Kharagpur way, or do you want to go us to IIM Bangalore way? And I said, that's a choice board will have to make. So I think the biggest challenge is there's too much noise. Okay, there's so much noise all around. How do you stay, right? Suddenly you will find you lose faculty, and somebody will say, what's happening? You're losing faculty. Somebody will say your NIRF rank is dropping. Somebody will say research, your NIRF is lower. Now, in all this noise, how do you say what is your core and stay focused on that? In order to keep doing those dialogue with everybody, including state government, right? State government keep asking, saying, what are you doing for us? We're saying, we will do things, but it'll take time, right? So everybody, students, MHRD keeps measuring on some MOU. convincing board that this is all nonsense.
Sir, can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
Can I interrupt you? I was seeing your faculty data, and I find most of them are either from foreign university or IIMs, ABC, or ISB.
ISB.
No
Or ISB,
one
yeah.
from IIT system. Any
Yeah.
specific reason?
No, I think we believe IIT works on a quantity, unfortunately. Okay.
That
So
was,
it's
that
a
was one
question.
Second one, sir, this black box of research score, we also have not been able to open. When the research has increased, we find our score has gone down. We are not able to make any correlation.
So also I'm saying is the problem. So you should never chase rankings, honestly. You should look at that as a feedback, especially when rankings are opaque. Right? When rankings are opaque, I can't make any sense out of this.
And third question.
I showed you that data and I showed that to board and faculty, saying, how do you make sense out of any of this? If you cannot make sense, I mean, we teach in our management that if your measurement system is faulty, don't use it. So we don't use it, but we use it as a feedback.
And the third thing, sir, I wanted to ask, one is suggestion really, that in research output, NIRF doesn't consider cases written at all. What's your opinion about cases, which is so essential for management teaching?
Yeah, so I think this is finally a call you will have to take. So I'll tell you, in first decade, initially we said, let's do cases, then we dropped. Now we are going back. But we are saying nobody will get any credit for that. We'll support it. So, okay, the way we work, we're saying there is a core contribution you have to make to institution. Beyond that, you have a freedom to do whatever you want. We don't get into it at all. But we'll support everything you do. So it's a portfolio you have. So for example, when we expect only 3 papers in 10 years, and if you're focusing so much on research, obviously people are going to publish more. But we are saying where you publish, we don't worry about it. So similarly, I think cases is important, right? It's very important. But it's going to happen for us in the next decade. Okay. But even then, in general, I mean, that's a model we have worked out. We don't do bean counting at all. The only thing we do is we say you should teach 3 courses. That also we look at over a 3-year block kind of thing so that you can play around. And second, for your promotion, we'll look at research. That's all. Otherwise, we don't bother about any. You can do whatever you want. We don't monitor anybody. We're saying you come to us for support. We are there to support you. You decide what you want to do in life. Obviously, while selecting, we select people who have identified research as a priority 1 and also want to do a good teaching.
So the last question I have is, you had shown a table that first 2 years, 65% they produce research, next is 45, then goes down. What is the actual against those targets?
No, I'll be honest with you. You can't measure any of those, right? So the only thing we do is convert that into teaching courses. That's all. So actually faculty would be spending more than that percentage. I'll be honest with you. Because what we do, in first 5 years, we give them easy courses to teach. We say, don't offer electives. Teach core courses. Don't do executive education. Teach core courses, 2 sections and 1 doctoral course. That's all. So with a result, first 5 years, people spend significantly lower time in teaching. So research is where bulk of them spend time. And as I said, as a system, we don't ask people to do administration. So that service component, at least for first probably 7-8 years, is very low. So I would say by and large, we follow all that actually. Those were just to give us somewhere communicate that that's the way we work. We want to communicate.
So I'll take some
Yes,
more
Shreya.
questions from the audience. So Dr. Pooja Malik has asked that teaching fraternity who come from industry holds a lot of experience, but putting that experience to writing high quality research may be difficult due to lack of hands-on experience in research area. So how do you mitigate that challenge?
So I would say ideal is a collaboration. As you rightly said, that you're bringing something rich from your experience. Ideal would be if you also have access to databases. Okay, that I have my relationship, using that I can get certain interesting databases, and you work with somebody who's a young researcher who's very good in methods, and that collaboration can work well, right? But I would say it'll be foolish to say on my own I would try and publish in those. For example, I can't publish. Let me be very clear. I can't publish in any of those journals, right? So I would be wasting my time if on my own, if I say I want to publish in those A-star journals. That's simply, okay, I just want to make sure A-star is our A-star. There are only 37 journals, okay? Okay, we have A-star 37 and we have 64 in A category. And that's the only thing we count for promotion now onwards. So I would say the path you choose is very different. Don't try and copy young, somebody who has come straight from a PhD. And please don't, I think you're bringing complementary skills. And if you do that, so initially write cases, work with a collaboration. Research is not a game, there are some fields where people give a lot of importance to single authored paper. Management is not that field. And I'll tell you what we have done very different from Bangalore. A lot of my references learned because I did a lot of learning from Bangalore. Bangalore, they would say, if 3 authors publish paper, you're going to get incentive, which is, let's say, we give, for example, 18 lakh for a A-star paper. They divide by number of authors. We don't divide by number of authors. We encourage people to work with multiple authors, because there is no way in management field. So this whole obsession with a single authored author have to go, and you have to encourage collaboration, right?
Very important point actually, because I think most of us have this, dilemma that how many authors do we have to have in a paper to be.
I would say initial phases, as many, okay? Don't worry about whatever. So for example, it's a very complex piece, especially good quality journal, right? As I said, first, I can't publish, I'm putting that up front, okay? For example, there's a lot of tacit knowledge in terms of the way you handle reviews. Now, only people who have published extensively can bring you that knowledge, right? So I think we should go away from this. Some people have, this whole obsession that saying, I don't want to if I bring international faculty in my paper, people will look down on me. I think you don't have a choice. That knowledge doesn't exist in a country. Right? So work with our collaborators. We encourage everybody. So that's why we came up with this whole academic advisor. Right?
An interesting question from Satya. He is a doctoral scholar. So he basically asks, is there an attrition rate for doctoral scholars in your institute?
So ours is a very young, let me be honest, okay? Our first student has not even graduated. She will graduate, Aarti will graduate this year, okay? But we don't have a very high attrition rate, but we have some attrition.
Okay.
And we think because we have outstanding young faculty, that would, but we are very young in our doctoral program. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so that's too fast to actually answer that.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have enough data. Not single has graduated also.
True. Then Dr. Naveen Srivastav has a broader question rather, that what are the upcoming areas of global relevance for an institution like ours? Basically, I think management institution is what he's trying to ask.
Okay, my view is digital.
Okay.
So that's what we have done. Okay, we have put our bets on digital as an institution. I mean, again, it's not a rocket science. When you look at those top 10 firms which I presented in market cap, 8 of them are digital companies. Okay. When you look at recruitment today, significant happens essentially in technology. You ask any corporate. So we think it's a no-brainer. The only thing we don't know what it means. I'll be honest with you. So what we have done is we have created advisory council of some outstanding people who are helping us understand. Then we do a pilot. So we said it's very difficult to do this in a 2-year MBA with 325 students. So we've done a pilot where we do a 1-year program, 1-year MBA with experienced people on digital enterprise management. And we are transferring all those learnings in our 2-year MBA. So with the result, for example, in 2-year MBA, we have introduced last year 3 core courses. One, digital marketing, other, digital technology. What does it mean for managers? And third, analytics. So they do a statistics course, but all this we have made as a part of a compulsory half courses right now. So if somebody has to ask me, but honestly, I'm a wrong person to answer that question. But if you force me, I will say digital is where I see world going. So when we looked at our curriculum, including my own course, right? I teach operations management, supply chain. There was 0 digital. Okay, 0. Okay. And I've been struggling. So that's the reason we said, let's do this a pilot, see how do we do it, and then transfer it.
Okay. So there's one more question from Arvind Shukla sir, is the chairperson of doctoral program here. He has asked a very, I'll not give an adjective to this question, but he has asked a very relevant question that a lot of us may be thinking. Do you feel that brand IIM helped IIM Udaipur in doing some of what it did?
Obviously, right? I mean, I think it will be foolish to say, I mean, we had a huge advantage, right?
True.
That, so especially in the student recruitment initially, and later on, even faculty, right? And third is, it also gave us 8 years of time, because government said you should become operationally self-sufficient in 8 years. So the 8 years was a long time. But at the same time, okay, I thought it is a huge advantage. And we send our first summer brochure with IIM name. We got a 0 response. Okay. So I think IIM brand name works to a point that obviously student will trust you a little more. The government gives you that funding initially, right? You have infrastructure in place. The board comes because of IIM name. So obviously all those are advantages. But finally, when you go to a recruitment, you have to prove yourself, right? When you go to a faculty, I mean, nobody's going to stay back because where I am. So it definitely helped, but only up to a point, right? So if somebody asks a question that if you look at in 2030, name top 35 institution, all 20 IIMs will be there. Just because government puts in that infrastructure, right? So you start with that thing. But how many of them will be in a top 10 is a question to ask, right? So top 35 automatically you come in once you have IIM name. But after that, it will be a function of what you do within that.
True. So it's an initial push, and then you have to kind
Yeah.
of fly on your own.
But there also, I'm saying it's not automatic. As I said, the hard lesson for me when in summer, as I said, we thought we send a IIM brochure name, we should get a lot of summer these things. And I said, zero response. Okay. Yeah.
So there's one more question from Dayatri Tiwari. She's also a research scholar here. She says, presently, especially post-COVID, it's pro tempore that short-term gains are appreciated by the institution. How do we resist the long-hanging fruit in publication? Also, it's immense faith of IIM Udaipur in young faculty. What was the motivation behind prioritizing potential over experience?
So two things. One, first, once we identified high quality research, India hardly anybody was doing it. So we realized that if we get somebody from existing institution, they'll come with a baggage. So we decided that we will. So obviously we use a lot of visiting faculty, but we didn't want anybody to come with a baggage. So that's why we said let's start with a young faculty and invest heavily in them. Right? I'm not sure I understood that post-COVID short-term.
So basically, what she was asking is that, a lot of Scopus Index journal or C category journals, there is a faster rate of publication. So how do you resist faculties to not publish there and rather publish in a category journal, if I understood it correctly?
No, so somebody wants to publish in even B, will not come to us, no? He will not get selected, he or she. So there's a self-selection happening that only people who are interested in a high quality research, right? And we don't give any weightage to any of those, right? We give only weightage to this top 100 journal, that's all. So whether it's a promotion, whether it's a research incentive, everything. So, why would anybody do that actually? Because we don't count at all. So I'm saying we first don't select people who look at that. But within that, even in top journals, they would look at COVID. So I don't see, that issue. It's an interesting phenomenon. And so everywhere in the world, there will be certain interesting topics which would get our attention everywhere. So that's true everywhere.
True. So we have around 7 more minutes to go. I'll take a couple of more questions, I think. So this is from Ariti Kulsheshwar. She's also a research scholar here. So how easy or challenging passing on this conscious vision of institution building and faculty career has been for the institute in terms of culture, values, and ethos?
So obviously, when you have so today, if you go and ask any faculty so I didn't get into that part, but we have actually identified that, actually maybe I should. So even when we showed 2 pillars, we had showed a foundation, which is a core values and culture. So if you ask any IMU faculty that what is a core value and culture of IIM Udaipur, they'll tell you support, flexibility, and entrepreneurship. So they know whatever they do, institute will support. There's no question asked. The flexibility. Nobody has to, they know they will get whatever they want. For example, at a faculty, this is a pre-COVID, right? She says, look, my daughter is in 12th, 10th. So can I stay in Bangalore for first 1 year? There's not even a discussion. This is pre-COVID, right? So all I'm saying is everybody knows. And annually, every faculty, I do a discussion. Now I and Dean do a discussion where our only discussion is about saying, what can institution do to further your goals? That's all. So I think the IMU culture for this complete independence. We never ask what you're doing. Complete independence, support, right? The flexibility. So to me, that's a core. And so, okay, that remains one challenge, that when we have a transition happening, I'm not worried about the vision part, because, vision board will be able to retain this culture. So we're spending a lot of time on this issue, that how do we make sure that when transition happens, my term gets over in May 2022, next year, we're not worried about vision, research and all that. I mean, that part is given. And the key is the culture. Whatever values and culture will be able to retain, same with a student kind of thing. That's a discussion we're doing.
Okay. And Dr. Verma has asked a question. Are good researchers also good teachers? And what do you do to develop good teachers?
So, I mean, this is a very complex question. Sometimes at a surface level, you find teaching and research are not connected at all, right? My own view is that a research is a more active mind. And if you're a more active mind, you're likely to engage in a more interesting conversation with your students. And that could be only 5 minutes out of your 1.5 hours. Okay. Now, obviously, there are a whole lot of skills which you'll have to develop in a faculty, right? Because our PhD program doesn't teach faculty on teaching. So you'll have to work on it. That's the reason we believe that we give at least 3 years. We don't worry about those issues. But we will have to work on it. But I would say what we had done was got some outstanding visiting faculty, essentially from Ahmedabad and Bangalore, based on relationship. And somewhere some of them helped our faculty. But again, this was given as a choice, so we didn't force anybody. Only now, because we have identified this as an important area, we're putting a structure to it. And we are very early stage in this. So we have started by having a teaching awards. Some of those things slowly we have started, but only over a period of time we'll figure it out, what really works.
Okay, I'll just take one last question. I'm sorry for a lot of questions that are there, but I'll not be able to take them up. So Dr. Shramana Ghosh has asked, do you have any compelling goals for executive education in IIMLab?
Okay. We had made a decision first 10 years, we are not doing executive. So we are the only institution didn't do at all. Because we thought, let's just stay focused on 2 things. Let's do a great research and great MBA program. That's all. We thought initial years executive education will be distraction. I think at high end, executive education is a great value, but not necessarily a low end. So we will get into it. Partly for revenue, partly for making sure that, if I'm doing a research in sustainable supply chain, it'll be nice if I create a platform where I'm able to interact with an outstanding top 10 things. So now we have started, okay, but we will. So I think one lesson we have learned is make sure anything you do should not distract anything. So for example, we don't allow our young faculty to, whatever we have started, young faculty will not teach in executive for first 5 years. Okay. Then we are saying we'll also put a limit. No faculty will teach more than X hours in executive education. As I am, we have a consulting rule, which is 52 days that anybody can do. We don't get into it. But we are saying internal executive education, first 5 years you can't teach, your young faculty. Then afterwards also we'll limit executive. So I see a lot of value, but our prioritization, the way we are saying impact is important, but we'll look at it only after 2025. We will not worry about it now.
With this, sir, I would like to, thank you for giving a very practical direction of, how to really go or achieve the goals that we set for. I would just, quickly sum up the major things that you focused on was essentially starting with what you really want to be, how do you want to, as an institution, how you want to stand out, and creating a culture and a sustainable culture by identifying the benchmarks, at the same time also identifying the space that you're working in, and using a robust framework is obviously a very good idea that you just told us. So with this, I would like to end the session, and thank you so much.
So let me just, I think what you summarized excellently. Basically, I'm just saying, let's preach what we teach.
Yeah.
Okay. We say, let's focus, right? Let's use a conceptual frameworks. So everything we do, we use conceptual framework. We go back to theory, right? If theory tells us this too, but focus, to me is a very important part. I think we have a luxury of a long horizon, which other industry don't have.
True.
Take advantage of it, right?
Yes.
And finally, I'm saying you also have to have luck on your side. Okay. The luck does play a role. We were lucky, right? So thank you. Really enjoyed. And if anybody has any question, you can feel free to reach out to me. Chaturvedi is a good friend, and we've done several things together. As I said, my heart is still at this idea that we should build top 30 schools, which should build, name in management education, and we should be hub, right? And so we've discussed a lot of those ideas, and I'm hoping one day we'll achieve those kind of dreams. Yeah.
And we also hope to see you here someday, sir.
Sure. Thank you again.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Right.
I also thank all the audience for such, lovely questions. It really ignited the thought-provoking session. The next session will start at 2:15 after the lunch break. Please be here on time so that we do not delay anything. Thank you again, sir, so much.
All the best. Yeah. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Bye.
Bye. Yeah.
Bye, sir.
Yeah.
It was a great session, sir. Great.
No, I mean, the only thing is obviously there are challenges all along, right?
Yes.
I mean, I talked about some challenges, but something like, to me, I think that academic advisory board was a great idea.
This is
because what happened is, because what happened when you take any idea first through that group, and then you bring it to board, nobody questions you because you have such a high, heavyweight. So obviously they will also not allow you to do anything which is nonsense, right? So you have to go with a lot of data, a lot of this thing. But it allowed us to focus a lot on the academic issues in a long term. Otherwise, board, suddenly this NIRF number comes and they'll say, what is this happening? Now I have to spend a lot of time to say that's complete nonsense. Just ignore it. Okay. So I think, but you have to show through data. So I showed through data. I said, can anybody make sense out of this? I said, I can't make sense. Okay. So, but obviously, finally, we have outstanding board. I must say that, it's a great board who's willing to look at it. And that's why I'm so happy that now we have board-driven strategy. So I don't have a role to play now. Actually, my job is, I don't have any job now, honestly. I have zero.
That's the biggest job, sir. You have found your loose break. We have yet to find a loose break for us.
It was a wonderful experience too.
Thank you. No, wonderful questions. But obviously you have your own challenges. All of us have our own challenges, right? So you'll have to figure it out what's good for you. So I didn't want to get into that space.
But your discourse will help a lot in charting out our long-term vision. And we understood this point that nothing can be done in hurry, and you should be very focused, and you should have your priorities.
So, but I'm saying this is what we teach to everybody. Let's just, practice that. So I find, it's interesting about faculty, right? we talk about intrinsic motivation, but all our these things don't work with intrinsic motivation. So somewhere there are a lot of contradictions which we work with. I mean, there are contradictions in life. As long as you recognize that you have those contradictions, how do you look at this intrinsic motivation of a student and a faculty? How do you create this? I'm not saying we have figured it out, right? But at least we are aware that, there are areas where what we're doing is not necessarily the best. Yeah. Okay, I'll let you go. You have better grab your lunch and be ready for your 2:15 session. Okay, thank you. Really enjoyed.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.